What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and today we are going to talk a little bit about history and the idea of the nobles and the serfs. And I'll explain more as we get into the video of why we're even traveling down this rabbit hole. But something happened recently in healthcare, and we need to discuss it and understand and learn from it what we can glean based on history and how these processes have worked out in the past. And I hope we can do all of that. First, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, drop a comment, share the videos, help us gain an audience. Because what we're trying to do here is give you the skinny on the labor movement from my own perspective. And I am nobody of authority. I'm just a dude who grew up poor and joined the labor movement because some other dude thought I might gain and benefit from it, and it changed my life and changed my quality of life. And so the way I grew up, all you had as we were big Scarface fans, so it was always, all I have in this world is my pulse and my word, and I don't break them for nobody. And if you've seen Scarface, you know how important Scarface's word was to him. Well, growing up poor and where I grew up, your word was pretty much all you had, and so you had to be a person of your word. And I say all that because when I joined the IBEW and got into the labor movement and my quality of life changed, I also swore an oath, and that oath came along with a lot of really beautiful objectives that I tried to adhere to. So this is all a natural thing. This isn't something that I'm trying to do for self-aggrandizement or profit or anything like that. I really do want to do my part in the labor movement, and so that's why I make these videos, so that hopefully when it gets out to you guys start to think, and then you start to appreciate this labor movement that has really granted us a life that we've never had before. I'm sorry for the long intro, but it felt important to say. Now, without further ado, we have some news. Moderna wants to jack their prices up on the COVID-19 vaccine. And regardless of your position on the COVID-19 vaccine and whether you should take it or not, by the way, my position is you should take it. Regardless of your position, this is an example of how these nobles, corporations, the nobility, the noble class of America, how they've always behaved in the United States since the British colonies, since the Spaniards came over and started making friends with the indigenous populations, who, by the way, were not the savages that history books and classrooms like to try to portray them as. The indigenous population in the Americas were wealthy beyond measure, and it's explicitly known because Columbus came here to rob the gold and had high demands of robbing gold. And it was South America, it was North America, it was the Caribbean, it was all the indigenous communities traveled amongst this region, and even though you have your skirmishes here and there, they were empires. These were not savages. These were well organized, lovely people who understood how to live in balance with nature and prospered as a result. So much so that they basically covered one half of the world, waiting for these other folks in other parts of the world to figure out that they even existed. But anyway, that's a side point. I want to talk about Moderna. So Moderna is jacking up the prices, and our buddy Bernie Sanders, the only senator in the game who really comes through off the top rope every time for working people, wrote them a letter, and I just want you guys to hear what he wrote, and we're going to expand upon it. All right, so here we go. This is to Stephanie Bancel. Stefan Bancel, Chief Executive Officer of Moderna. Dear Mr. Bancel, yesterday, the Wall Street Journal reported that Moderna is considering more than quadrupling the price of its COVID vaccine after the supply that the U.S. government purchased and distributed to Americans at no cost is depleted. Instead of charging $26.36 per dose, the price that the government paid, Moderna has indicated that the commercial price will go up to as much as $130 per dose. I have very deep concerns about that decision and the impact that it will have on the federal budget, the cost of private insurance, and the unnecessary deaths that may occur because millions of Americans may not be able to afford the vaccine at the new cost. A lot of people can't put up that kind of dough, man. I am writing to ask you to reconsider your decision and refrain from any price increases. The huge increase in price that you have proposed will have a significantly negative impact on the budgets of Medicaid, Medicare, and other government programs that will continue covering the vaccine without cost sharing for patients. Your decision will cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Your outrageous price boost will also increase private health insurance premiums. Perhaps most significantly, the quadrupling of prices will make the vaccine unavailable for many millions of uninsured and underinsured Americans who will not be able to afford it. How many of those Americans will die from COVID-19 as a result of limited access to these life-saving vaccines? While nobody can predict the exact figure, the number could well be in the thousands. In the midst of a deadly pandemic, restricting access to this much-needed vaccine is unconscionable. I find your decision particularly offensive given the fact that the vaccine was jointly developed in partnership with scientists from the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, a U.S. government agency that is funded by U.S. taxpayers. That's right. The U.S. government NIH department helped to create the science and to create the vaccine. The federal government directly provided $1.7 billion to your company for research and development and guaranteed your company billions more in sales. In other words, you propose to make the vaccine unaffordable for the residents of this country who made the production of the vaccine possible. That is not acceptable. Not acceptable, but it is the way things are done in America. We have a class of nobles that get their ideas of the earth and all that's on it from the monarchy of England. And the reason I say that is because the colonies were ruled by the monarchs. Christopher Columbus came from a monarch system. So the folks that came here that were not indigenous to these lands came with ideas of monarchy. They came with ideas of monarchy, which is that you have the nobles and the serfs. And if you work for a living, by the way, you're part of the serfs. You should know that. And so these nobles came over here with these ideas that they would take everything that the earth has to offer and extract wealth from it. That was gold, that was wood, that was cotton, that was people, that was land, that's everything. They're going to extract wealth from it. And that was the idea. The natives of this land already knew that we are of the earth. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust, we are of the earth. And so we're not here to extract wealth out of the earth. We are here to find balance with each other and with the earth so that we can be a harmonious living organism, which is what the entire ecosystem is. But this corrupted idea, this greedy idea of extracting wealth is what was the seeds that were being planted in the fertile soils of the Americas as these first folks to come over here, the colonizers that came from Britain, and came over here and kind of implemented what they thought would be the ideal system. Now you got to also understand that they also brought with them white supremacy. And so they saw the native people as lesser than, as animals, savages. And so they didn't find a problem with extracting wealth from their very human bodies. This is the seed that sprouted the tree that is the American economy, American government, all of it. You got to go back through history and you'll see these were folks that were like nobles, but they were pissed off that they were paying taxes to England and England wasn't representing them. And so they convinced the serfs here that we'll be better off if we had individual freedom and we would fight back and throw the tea in the river, blah, 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 blah. And we fought. And we overthrew England, kicked them off our shores. But the ruling class were of that system. They were of nobles. They weren't folks that thought that they were one with nature and that everybody, you know what I mean? They didn't find collectivism as something that would work. Whereas the natives, the indigenous folks, knew collectivism was all that worked. And so I just want to put that out there because this is not new. This is old hat. During the railroad expansion, the railroad companies created monopolies and extracted wealth out of, they made deals where they would run coal at certain times, at certain prices, and they extracted wealth to the point that there was a spontaneous railroad strike of 1877 where a lot of folks died and the nation was put on notice because the serfs were pissed at the conditions. The nobles have always tried to run the serfs into the ground for as much wealth as they can. Let's not forget that. And this is no different. I find your decision particularly offensive given the fact that the vaccine was jointly developed. Okay, I already read that part. That's not acceptable. Mr. Bansal, in the last 2 years, Moderna made over $19 billion in profits and used those profits to provide incredibly extravagant compensation packages to you and other top officials at Moderna, at your company. It is reported that you yourself became a multi-billionaire as a direct result of Moderna's COVID vaccine, and with Forbes currently estimating your wealth at $6.1 billion. Moreover, Nabur Afeyan, Moderna's chairman and co-founder, is currently worth $2.1 billion. Robert Langer, another co-founder of Moderna, is now worth $2.2 billion. Timothy Springer, a founding investor in Moderna, is now worth $2.6 billion. Further, my understanding is that Moderna approved a $926 million golden parachute for you once you leave your company, along with $160 million for Stephen Hodge, Moderna's president, and $53 million for Juan Andres, Moderna's chief technical officer. I should point out that all of this corporate welfare and profiteering has taken place in the midst of the worst public health crisis in America in 100 years. In the last 3 years, nearly 1.1 million Americans died from COVID-19, and over 100 million more have become ill. It has also been estimated that the cost of producing the vaccine is now as low as $2.85 per dose, 2.2% of what Moderna has suggested charging to the public. Let's be clear. The purpose of the recent taxpayer investment in Moderna was to protect the health and lives of the American people, not to turn a handful of corporate executives and investors into multi-billionaires. A lot of people took advantage of the pandemic and got rich off of it. These nobles, they just feel like everything is to be siphoned out for their own wealth and betterment and screw everybody else. I love that I found the labor movement, or that the labor movement found me, more importantly, because I wasn't even looking for it. I didn't know that it existed. I had no idea. It found me. I was so lucky that the labor movement found me. And I'll be damned if I sit back and become, or my mindset to become, like the nobles who are destroying the planet through this suction of wealth and greed into a very, very tiny fractions, wealthy little hands, while the rest of us suffer. As you know, the federal government over the years has supported Moderna every step of the way, going back to 2013, when your company reportedly only had 3 employees. Now, in the midst of the continuing public health crisis and the growing federal deficit, is not the time for Moderna to be quadrupling the price of the vaccine. Now is not the time for unacceptable corporate greed. And here's the part I love, because it tells me where Bernie's going to be serving. As the incoming chairman of the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions in the United States Senate, I look forward to hearing your response in the very near future. Sincerely, Senator Bernard Sanders. This guy is a jewel. He's a jewel. I love Senator Sanders. He's the realest. He's just the realest. But we have to learn from our history, understand the ideas that created the circumstances that we live under, so that we can then understand the best way to combat those ideas and earn ourselves a higher and higher standard of citizenship for us, our families, and our communities. Keep in mind, the fight is not left and right. It is up and down. It has always been up and down. And if you work for a living, you're on the bottom. It's going to take solidarity to win always. Each one teach one. Get out there and reach one. And don't forget, there can be no union without you and I front and center. Let's get it. Peace.